There comes a moment in life, my dear, when the mirror no longer asks who you used to be, but who you still might become. A moment when time stops feeling like a countdown and begins to feel like a doorway, quiet, open, waiting for you to finally walk through. And if no one has told you this today, let me be the first. You are not late. You are not behind. You are becoming right on time. My name is Rosario, and at 72, after countless roles, careers, endings, restarts, and reinventions, I've learned one truth that changed everything for me. Life doesn't follow a straight line. It unfolds, slowly, gently, like a flower blooming long after spring has passed. You see, I didn't find my real voice when I was young. I found it in the quiet of my later years, in the soft courage that comes only after decades of surviving yourself, your doubts, your fears, your choices. And today, I want to guide you through a journey, not of rushing, not of regret, but of remembering. Remembering that your path is not a detour, it is your debut. If this message touches you, stay with me until the end. We're just getting started. If this opening resonates with your heart, take a moment to subscribe so you don't miss the next steps of your own unfolding. You know, my dear, people often speak of aging as if it were a slow fading. But those of us who have crossed the line into our 60s, we know better. We don't fade, we gather. We collect years the way trees collect rings. Each one a story, a scar, a memory, a quiet victory no one else ever saw. But with those rings come weights we rarely talk about. The weight of what we didn't become. The weight of the dreams we folded away because we were too busy raising others. The weight of choices we made quickly and regrets we've carried slowly. The weight of voices, teachers, parents, partners, telling us who we should be until we forgot how to hear our own. When I turned 60, I remember sitting alone on my porch one evening, watching the sky shift from gold to violet, and I suddenly felt it, this heavy cloak made of years I never questioned, expectations I had inherited, roles I had performed so well that I had mistaken them for myself. It wasn't sadness, it wasn't disappointment, it was a realization. I had spent a lifetime living correctly, yet not always living truthfully. Maybe you understand that feeling too. Maybe you felt that tightening in the chest, the quiet thought you push away, the whisper saying, "There is still something in me that has not been expressed." And here's the part no one tells us. When you reach this age, the soul becomes louder. Quieter on the outside, yes, but louder on the inside. It starts knocking, gently at first, then insistently, as if it's saying, "You've carried enough. Now let go. Now begin." The world tells us youth is the time for discovery. But I believe the real discovery begins after 60, when you finally stop pretending, stop rushing, stop arguing with life, and begin listening to that ancient voice within you. The voice that has been waiting for you to become quiet enough to hear it. My dear, aging is not the closing chapter. It is the doorway to the chapter you were always meant to write, not the chapter others expected, not the chapter you thought you should follow, but the chapter where your true voice finally steps forward and says, "Now it's my turn." There is a moment, subtle, almost imperceptible, when something inside you shifts. You don't announce it, you don't plan it. It simply arrives like a soft breeze entering a room you thought was sealed. For some people, it happens after a loss. For others, after a birthday that feels heavier than the candles on the cake. For many, it appears on a quiet morning while you're washing dishes or folding a towel, when suddenly the thought crosses your mind. I don't want to keep living the same day for the rest of my life. I remember mine. I was 63. I had just finished making tea, my chamomile with a hint of mint, the kind that used to remind me of my grandmother. And as I held the warm cup between my hands, I felt this strange mixture of comfort and longing. Not for a younger version of myself, but for an authentic version of myself. The woman I had always been beneath the roles. The woman who used to write poetry at 16. The woman who dreamed of traveling alone at 30. The woman who loved singing, but stopped because someone once said her voice was too soft. In that moment, I realized something simple and profound. I had spent years editing myself, toning myself down, minimizing my desires so no one would think I wanted too much. And yet here I was, wanting more than ever, not material things, not applause, not validation, but permission. Permission to be myself, even if it confused people, even if it disappointed someone, even if it surprised everyone who thought they knew me. My dear, let me share something with you. At this age, you no longer owe the world a performance. You owe it your truth. We spend youth trying to fit in. We spend adulthood trying to prove ourselves. But after 60, something miraculous happens. We begin longing not to impress, but to express. This is the moment everything changes. The instant you stop asking, "What will they think?" and begin asking, "What do I feel?" And trust me, that one question can unravel decades of silence. It can awaken passions you buried. It can open doors you thought had rusted shut. It can rebuild a self you didn't even realize had been waiting. Because when you ask what you feel, what you want, what you dream, you stop being a character and finally become the author. This is the quiet revolution of aging, the transformation no one sees coming. Not a rebellion of noise, but a rebellion of truth. And it always begins within you. My dear, with time, we begin to notice the little aches, the stiffness in the morning, the slower steps, the breath that takes a moment longer to settle. People say this is simply aging, but that is only half the truth. The body doesn't just age, the body remembers. Every tension is an unfinished sentence. Every pain is a story that was never told. Every tightness is a truth we swallowed because the world taught us to be strong, polite, silent, composed. But I have learned something precious, something I wish someone had told me sooner. The body heals the moment the story is allowed to breathe. Let me share something personal. For years, decades really, I carried a pain in my chest. Doctors said it was stress. Others said it was the natural weight of life. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just physical. It was emotional. It was the story I had never voiced, how often I abandoned myself to keep the peace, how many times I said yes when my soul whispered no, how much of my life I lived on mute. And one day, during a quiet afternoon, I sat down with my journal and did something I had never done. I wrote the truth, not for the world, not for therapy, but for me. As the words flowed, something softened, first in my heart, then in my body. I cried, my dear, not because I was sad, but because I was finally honest. And slowly, with each day, the pain in my chest loosened like a knot finally learning to untangle. Because the body doesn't want perfection, it wants presence. Your knees, your back, your shoulders, they're not just aging, they're speaking. They're asking you to release the pressure, to forgive what you've been holding, to let the story come out of hiding. Healing after 60 is not a race. It's a remembering, a return to yourself, a gentle reconciling between the life you lived and the life still waiting for you. And here is the beauty of it. Not to others, but to yourself. Your body breathes a little easier. Your spine straightens. Your heart warms. Your steps lighten. Because when you honor your story stops hurting you and instead begins to heal you. You know, my dear, when people talk about changing their lives after 60, they often imagine something grand, something dramatic, a big trip, a new career, a bold transformation. But true change, the kind that lasts, the kind that nourishes, the kind that awakens the soul, it doesn't start with something big. It starts with something honest. For me, it began with a walk. Just a walk, 10 minutes around the block. Slow, gentle, with the kind of tenderness you offer to a child learning to stand. At the time, I wasn't thinking about health or longevity. I was thinking about breathing. I wanted to remember what it felt like to be inside my own body instead of simply carrying it around. And do you know what happened? On the second day, I walked a little farther. On the third, I noticed the sky. On the fourth, I heard the birds more clearly. By the end of the first week, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, a sense of beginning. That's the secret most people overlook. Transformation doesn't come from intensity. It comes from consistency, from tenderness, from taking one small step so many times that it becomes a path. Let me tell you something else. Your body loves you more than you realize. Even when it aches, even when it slows down, it is still trying every day to keep you alive. So when you move, even just a little, your body whispers thank you. When you drink water, your cells sigh with relief. When you choose rest, your heart steadies. When you breathe slowly, your nervous system calms like a child who finally feels safe. This is why starting small is not a weakness. It is wisdom. It is respect. It is partnership with the body that has carried you through storms, through losses, through decades of responsibilities and expectations. And if you're listening to me right now thinking, but Rosario, I feel so behind, let me reassure you. You are not behind. You are beginning. And beginnings, my dear, are sacred. No matter your age, no matter how long it has been since you cared for yourself consciously, no matter how lost you may feel, the smallest step forward is still a step toward life. You don't need to climb a mountain. Just open the door. Put one foot outside. Let the air touch your face. Let your story breathe. Small steps transform us because they are the only ones we can truly repeat. And repetition builds the life you think you're too late to start. But trust me, you're right on time. My dear, one of the most beautiful, rebellious, liberating things you can do after 60 is allow yourself to feel joy without apologizing for it. You would be surprised how many of us reach this age still asking permission to be happy, permission to rest, permission to dream, permission to do something simply because it delights the soul. For decades, we lived for others, Children, partners, parents, jobs, duties, routines. And somewhere along the way, we learned to silence the small sparks of joy because they didn't seem necessary or productive or appropriate. But joy, my dear, joy is not a luxury. It is medicine. When I turned 68, I did something that shocked everyone in my family. I took a painting class. I hadn't picked up a brush since childhood, but one morning I woke up with this quiet longing, a little whisper saying, "Color, you need color again." The first day I walked into that studio, I felt foolish, too old, too inexperienced, too out of place. But the moment I touched the paint, the moment the color stained my fingers, I felt something inside me bloom, a softness, a warmth. A reminder that joy doesn't disappear with age. It simply waits for us to make room for it again. And do you know what I discovered? Joy is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is not youthful. Joy at this age is something different, deeper, gentler, wiser. It is the pleasure of waking without rushing, the sweetness of tea warming your hands, the comfort of clothes that feel like home, the laughter that comes softly but stays longer, the freedom of saying, "I don't mind," and truly meaning it. But perhaps the greatest joy of all is the joy that comes from no longer needing to prove anything. You don't have to justify your hobbies. You don't have to explain your choices. You don't have to shrink your happiness so others feel comfortable. At this age, joy becomes a scent, something that rises naturally from a life lived with truth. And let me tell you a secret. Joy lengthens our life, not in years, but in depth, in breadth, in presence. When you reclaim joy, your heart relaxes, your sleep improves, your mind clears, your spirit glows in a way that no cream, no treatment, no doctor can ever replicate. Joy is vitality. Joy is resilience. Joy is your soul remembering itself. And you, my dear, deserve to taste joy again. Not someday, not when everything is perfect, not when everyone approves, but now. Because joy is not something you earn. It is something you allow. There comes a time in life when holding on costs more than releasing. And after 60, this truth becomes clearer than ever. Letting go is not a failure. It is a skill, a quiet, powerful, holy skill. Because the older we get, the more we realize that peace doesn't come from controlling everything. Peace comes from allowing life to be what it is without letting it steal our softness. There were things I held on to for decades. Old stories, old hurts, old expectations. Some were placed on me. Some I placed on myself. Some were simply inherited, passed down from women who never had the chance to release what wasn't theirs. And for years, I thought letting go meant forgetting. But no, letting go is remembering with compassion instead of carrying with cane. When I was 65, I decided to clean an old drawer in my bedroom. You know the kind, the drawer where we put things we don't want to face. Letters, photos, objects, memories. As I opened it, a wave of emotions washed over me. I found pieces of a life I no longer lived, faces of people I once loved deeply, and versions of myself I had long outgrown. At first, I felt a sting, an ache, like a goodbye that arrived too late. But as I touched each object, I began to thank it. Thank you for who I was then. Thank you for what I learned. Thank you for what stayed, and thank you for what left. And with every thank you, something lifted. I didn't throw everything away. That's not what letting go means. but I release the weight of carrying it. Letting go is choosing what deserves to travel with you into your next chapter. People think healing is about adding habits, adding routines, adding strength. But healing at this age is mostly about subtracting. Subtracting what drains you, subtracting what no longer fits, subtracting the guilt of not being who you once were, subtracting the pressure to keep every connection alive simply because it once mattered. Letting go is an act of love, love for yourself and love for the life you still have ahead. And let me tell you something, my dear. When you release what no longer belongs, the world feels lighter. Your steps feel easier. Your mind becomes spacious, like a room with the windows open. And your heart, your beautiful heart, finally has room to breathe again. Letting go is grace. It is wisdom. It is liberation. It is not the end. It is the beginning of a softer life. As we grow older, we begin to realize something profound. Not everyone we shared life with was meant to stay forever, and not everyone who stayed was meant to go deep with us. After 60, connection stops being about quantity and becomes entirely about nourishment. At this stage of life, the heart becomes wiser. It develops a quiet radar, a sense of who drains us, who respects us, who listens, who rushes us, and who truly sees us. For many years, I surrounded myself with people because I feared loneliness. I attended gatherings out of obligation, kept friendships out of habit, and tolerated conversations that left me feeling smaller. But something shifted as I aged. I began craving depth, not noise, honesty, not politeness, presence, not performance. I learned that a single, meaningful conversation can nourish the soul more than a lifetime of shallow companionship. Let me tell you a story. When I was 70, I met a woman named Helena in a small community workshop. We were strangers then, both sitting quietly in the back of the room. And yet, when we spoke afterward, it felt like our souls recognized each other. She didn't ask what I did for a living. She didn't compare achievements or stories. She asked something so rare, so simple. How is your heart today? My dear, do you know how healing it is to be asked a question like that at a time in life when most assume you have nothing new to feel? Since that day, Helena and I have shared slow afternoons, long cups of tea, conversations that wander like rivers, and silences that feel like home. She is not a friend of circumstance. She is a friend of the soul. And that is the kind of connection you deserve at this stage of your life. You deserve people who celebrate your softness, honor your boundaries, listen without rushing, and make you feel alive instead of responsible. You deserve people with whom you can be unpolished, unhurried, unmasked. And here's the gentle truth. It is never too late to find your people. Sometimes we find our true tribe after 60, after 70, after 80, when we are finally done pretending and ready to be seen for who we truly are. But remember this, my dear. Connection also begins with you. When you speak honestly, honest people appear. When you soften, gentle souls find you. When you respect your limits, only those who respect them remain. At this age, relationships don't need to be many. They just need to be nourishing. And when you find even one person with whom you can share truth instead of small talk, you are already richly accompanied. My dear, one of the greatest myths about aging is the belief that purpose belongs only to the young, that meaning is something you chase in your 20s, build in your 30s, and reflect on in your 40s. But they forget something essential. Purpose is not a project. It is a pulse, a subtle, living presence within you, and it never stops beating. Even now, especially now. After 60, purpose changes shape. It becomes gentler, slower, more intimate. Less about achievement and more about alignment. Purpose is no longer, what should I do? But rather, how do I want to live? You don't need a grand mission. You don't need a big plan. You don't need applause or recognition. Purpose after 60 often appears in the smallest moments, the ones others overlook. Let me share something with you. There was a time when I believed my purpose had ended. My children were grown, my work had slowed, and the rhythm of my days had become quiet. One afternoon, as I sat on a bench in a public garden, an elderly man I had never met sat down beside me. He looked tired, as if the whole world had been resting on his shoulders. We exchanged a few words. Then he opened up about the loneliness of losing his wife after 53 years of marriage. He didn't need solutions. He didn't need advice. He needed presence. He needed someone to witness his grief without rushing it. And so I sat with him. We talked. We listened to the wind. We allowed silence. When he left, he held my hand and said, "Thank you. I haven't felt this human in months." And in that moment, I understood something that forever changed my view of purpose. Sometimes your purpose is simply to be a safe place where another heart can rest. Purpose is not something you chase. It is something you express by living truthfully. It might be tending a garden. It might be reading stories to grandchildren. It might be volunteering. It might be creating. It might be learning something new. It might be healing your own heart so your presence becomes kinder to the world. Purpose at this age is softer but more powerful because it rises from authenticity, not expectation. And here's the most beautiful part, my dear. You do not find your purpose. You allow it. You allow your life to speak through your actions. You allow your heart to guide your steps. You allow your soul to breathe in the direction it's been whispering for years. Purpose is not out there. It's within you, waiting for the quiet years to finally be heard. You are not done. Your life is still speaking. My dear, if you have walked with me until now, then you already know something precious about yourself. You are not finished, not even close. Life after 60 is not a descent. It is an unveiling, a gentle revealing of who you truly are when the noise of the world finally quiets and the voice within you grows louder, steadier, truer. In these years, we no longer measure life in achievements, but in presence. Not in what we accumulate, but in what we release. Not in how fast we move, but in how deeply we feel. You see, my dear, there is a way of living that is both full and soft. A way that does not rush you, does not pressure you, does not shame you for taking your time. It is a life where mornings begin with gratitude, not urgency. Where decisions come from intuition, not fear. Where joy is allowed to bloom quietly like a flower that no longer needs an audience. Living fully now means living truthfully. It means choosing peace over performance, connection over comparison, self-respect over self-sacrifice. It means allowing yourself to rest without guilt, to dream without apology, to speak without shrinking, to grieve without hiding, to love without fear of being too late. Because, my dear, you are right on time for joy, for softness, for courage, for rediscovery. And if you ever doubt this, place your hand over your heart. Feel its rhythm, feel its warmth, feel how it has never once stopped choosing you. Your heart is not tired, it is wise. Your soul is not old, it is vast. Your life is not behind you, it is unfolding right now, in this breath, in this moment, in this quiet recognition that you are still here and there is still so much left to live. My dear, live gently, live honestly, live fully, not for the world, but for yourself. Because the greatest gift of aging is finally belonging to your own life. If this message warmed your heart, share it with someone who needs to remember that it is never too late to return to themselves. And if you'd like to continue this journey with me, subscribe to the channel so we can keep walking softly and truthfully side by side.